Welcome back to Stab the Dragon for episode number 93 in Texas Rye Whiskey Tournament number 2. This is the first bracket of the first part of the Texas Whiskey Tournament that will include competitions between 9 categories of whiskey: ryes, bourbons, corn whiskey, single malts, blends and American whiskeys, finished whiskeys, smoked whiskeys, wannabe Texas whiskeys, and liqueurs. 9 categories. So this is probably going to take me the rest of my life to do this. Now, for the competitors, in this corner we have Lockwood Rye. Lockwood Distilling Company is based out of Richardson, Texas, a suburb of Dallas. It was founded by Sally and Evan Batt in 2019, right before COVID. And then there's another distillery and bar and restaurant in Fort Worth that was founded in 2021. So they have actually 2 small distilleries, one in Dallas and one in Fort Worth. So that's interesting. One in Fort Worth is close to my house. I have been there. Very nice folks, wonderful environment. Had a great, I think it was a Manhattan with the rye that I've had there, and then I sampled some of the other drinks. They make a total of 11 spirits, from vodka, gin, rum, flavored whiskey, straight bourbon, straight rye, bourbon cream. And then they have, I think, 3 different proofs for their straight bourbon. I think they've got a 90 proof, a 100 proof, and then a barrel proof. And I've had some of each, actually. This is a straight rye tonight, which basically means it has at least 51% rye, aged for a minimum of 2 years. There's no Mashville available, but they do say they use Oklahoma rye. It weighs in at 90 proof. Lockwood Rye is fighting as the underdog tonight. I reviewed this whiskey back in July of this year, or of last year, 2022, and it scored a 75 on my point scale and a C plus on the flavor scale. And even though I enjoyed the Manhattan that Lockwood made for me, the whiskey straight that they had, neat that I had a couple of times out of this bottle, didn't enjoy it all that much. It wasn't bad, but it's very different. Okay. Now, fighting out of the right corner, Oak&Eden Rye&Spire. Oak&Eden whiskeys are a product of Sanctified Spirits based in Louisville, Texas, about 38 miles from home. But their headquarters, or their flagship as they call it, is in Bridgeport, Texas, which is northwest of Fort Worth, going out the Jacksboro Highway, about 45 miles from here. So this is not exactly a Fort Worth whiskey, but Fort Worth is kind of in between the flagship tasting room and the bottling plant. So there you go, close enough. I'm a bit confused about what exactly goes on where, but my best guess from the website is that taste room and nice bar. I've seen pictures. That's the Bridgeport thing. Louisville, they bottle the whiskey, and that's also where they put the spire. You can see the spire, the wood spire in there. That's where they place the spire in. They bottle it and ship it out from the Louisville site. The company was formed in April of 2017. Their first product released in May of 2018. And for a craft whiskey, that's pretty fast. So what happened? The company was formed by Joe and Jamie Gildenzopf and Brad Nethery with the idea of providing a finished whiskey that was inspired, so to speak. They source their whiskey from MGP and other distilleries where it is aged in Indiana to prevent the Texas effect, right? And they actually talk about that on one of their videos, is they in order to manage the flavor profile to what they want, they realized they could not age it in Texas. There you go. But after it's aged in Indiana, they bring it to Texas, to Louisville. They put that 5-inch spiral cut piece of wood in the bottle. And the wood could be maple, French oak, cherry, ash. It's been toasted to one degree or other. And a lot of these spires are immersed in something else. Like there's some beer, local beer from Rye that they've immersed those spires in. They do it in some wine casks and other things. and then that imparts flavor to the whiskey in the bottle. So some would call it a gimmick. I think I call it a genius. There was a Forbes article that I looked at about this whiskey, and they did pictures and everything and a taste test before the spire, halfway through the spire, and then at the end of the spire. And the effect was very noticeable, very noticeable. So I think it works. The Rye&Spire version that we have here is one of their core whiskeys. This bottle has a mash bill of 95 rye and 5 barley. Weighs in at 90 proof. This bottle of Oak&Eden will be competing in 3 categories in this bigger whiskey tournament. Today it's the rye whiskey category, but would also compete in the finished whiskeys and the almost Texas whiskey categories. Wannabe Texas whiskey. Going into tonight's competition, the Oak&Eden I've placed as favored to win, because when I reviewed this whiskey in October of 2021, it scored 82 points and a B+ on my scoring method there. What about prices? This Oak&Eden will run you $40.99 at Total Wine. Specs has it for $42.99. Goody Goody, $44.99. The Lockwood we've got for $31.99 at Goody Goody and $31.99 at Total Wine. But it's not available at Specs, apparently. At least it's not on the website. Websites are notoriously bad. I'm pretty sure I've seen Lockwood at Specs, so that's just a pretty sure, but the website didn't have it. So there's a big price differential between the two, actually. Now, an admin note, I have not had either of these whiskeys in recent months. And, obviously I've had about half the bottle of this one. I think I shared this with my son when he was up visiting. And the Lockwood I'd only had a little bit before I poured for this evening. So I've had maybe 2 glasses or 3. I think maybe 3 of the Lockwood before tonight. So they've both been resting for quite a while in my cabinet. So now when I evaluate these whiskeys for the competition, I look at the visual effect here, and you can see the one on my right is very much darker than the one on the left. And so this is obviously going to be the Oak&Eden. This one's obviously going to be the Lockwood. So, the visual, if I had the blacked out Glencairns, and if I had my wife do the pour, that might be more fair. But part of my grading of whiskeys is visual. And so I prefer darker whiskeys for whatever reason. And so on a visual scale, I would give this one probably a 4 and this one a 2. I mean, so there's a huge difference in the visual effect of these 2 whiskeys. So just on visual alone, the Oak&Eden comes in ahead. But in this tournament, I'm really going off of taste. Now, my tiebreaker is going to be availability and cost. So if I really have trouble deciding which one I like the best, then I use the tiebreaker. So let's start off with a nose. Now there's a very faint rye smell. Maybe a grassy smell. Those of you who've watched my other videos know my nose is horrible. I can't smell much at all. That's always been the case. Yeah, I had COVID a year ago, but if anything, COVID, it didn't affect my nose at all. So very faint rye spice, maybe grassy smell. Just a hint of sweetness maybe. Over here, the Oak&Eden. Definite rye spice, but this rye comes across as the pencil eraser. Rye can have a wide variety of smells. Pencil eraser is one. Kind of like bullet rye. Yeah, that comes across like bullet rye. Am I getting anything else? Something, maybe some background that's deeper and richer than the rye eraser. I would have to say that of the two, I'm preferring the Lockwood on the nose. So I'm going to say Oak&Eden wins the visual, Lockwood wins the nose. Now let's go in for the taste. Now that's different. This has sat in my cabinet for several months. You know, I drank this back last summer of 2022, and then I just put it in my cabinet and haven't touched it since. And this has improved. I'm getting some rye spice. It approaches the eraser, but then backs off. There's some sweetness there, some grassy, and some vegetal. This is actually pretty complex for a rye. That's interesting. That's made a lot of improvement. Now, this has happened to me before, where I opened a bottle, and the initial pour, I didn't like at all. And then maybe a second pour a few days or a few weeks later, didn't like it at all. That's what happened with this bottle. My first two pours from this bottle, I didn't like. And I didn't grade it on the first pour. I never do that. I never grade on the first pour because I've just had too much experience with the neck pour being not my favorite. So I didn't grade it until the second pour, maybe even the third. And it was odd. I mean, this one came across as odd. Not bad, but odd. Now, the Manhattan that I had with this rye at the distillery was pretty good. Tonight, this is coming across much better than before. So I'm getting some rye spice. It approaches the eraser level, but not quite. I'm getting some grassiness and some vegetal notes there. That's actually pretty interesting. Topo Chico to cleanse the palate. So now let's go to Oak&Eden. Cheers. Now the Oak&Eden, the mouthfeel is a little bit richer and creamier than on the Lockwood. The Lockwood was not thin, but the Oak&Eden is a little bit richer mouthfeel. The flavor profile is not as sharp as the Lockwood. The flavor here, yeah, I'm getting a little bit of the eraser, but not as much as with a bullet rye. And I'm getting barrel, wood. The spire is really kicking in here. And that makes this a very different rye. Because I'm not getting a whole lot of the rye spice. It's there. This is a little bit sweeter. Neither is real sweet. You know, these aren't bourbons. But it's a little bit sweeter than the Lockwood. And definitely the wood spire is giving me some wood tannin notes there. So this is not as grassy, not as vegetal as the Lockwood. A little bit richer. Wow, these are both very different. And again, I think the Oak&Eden is coming across not quite as positively as it did before when I gave this the initial review. I think after the initial review, I mean, I gave it a B+. and I'm not getting that much favorable this time. And this was favored to win tonight. This one I thought was going to win. This is going to be really close. Wow. This is going to be very difficult to decide, because clearly Lockwood is $10 cheaper a bottle. Okay. But the Lockwood is available at only 2 out of my 4 stores that I go to on a regular basis. Oak&Eden is available at all 4, at least according to the website. You know, the Lockwood may be available at Specs. I think I've seen it at Specs. So, and the distillery is 12 minutes from my house. So, you know, you're going to have about equal availability here, very close to equal, I think. But the Oak&Eden is $10 more, at least $10 more. There you go. Which one is the winner? All right, here's the deal. I'm going to have to make a winner. I'm going to say Lockwood, and that surprises me. I had picked Oak&Eden in advance to win. But you know what? Because here I'm doing the same thing I did last week when I was judging between the Blackland Rye and the Acre Texas Rye. Is the Blackland Rye last week had better rye flavor. Both whiskeys are fantastic. I love both. But the Blackland had a better rye flavor and it was cheaper. Here, the Oak&Eden, $10 more per bottle. I'm getting much more wood here than rye. That Spire really did a number on this. Now, this is good. I mean, man, if I had to say which was better, they're so very different. They're about equal. But the Lockwood is cheaper. I think it's just as available. And as far as the rye category goes, I get more of a good rye flavor from Lockwood. That really surprises me. 2 weeks in a row, I have picked my favorite and the favorite lost. 2 weeks in a row. That's amazing. So, the winner of tonight's competition, I'm going to say, is Lockwood Distilling Company. There you go. That's the winner. Now, next week, what are we looking at for our bracket next week? Lead Slinger Fighting Spirit Rye at 90 proof versus the Herman Marshall Rye at 92 proof. I think that's going to be what we do next week. There might be a late change. I'm not sure. Lead Slinger is coming out of Oklahoma. So why is it in the Texas competition? Well, Matt Best, who owns and started Lead Slinger along with his other military vet buddies, Matt Best is a Texan. And Oklahoma has, as far as I know, 1 distillery that's producing stuff. I'm from Oklahoma. It's 3 hours up the road. It's closer to the Lead Slinger distillery than it is to the Houston distilleries. So it's an almost Texas whiskey. That's what I'm going to say. But it's going to compete here with the Texas whiskeys. There you go. Herman Marshall Rye, coming out of Dallas, but I think they're moving or have moved maybe to, I think, Tyler, Texas, something like that. So if I do Herman Marshall, I mean, there's a chance I might pull something else in. at 90 proof. We'll see. But right now it's going to be next week, Lead Slinger Rye versus Herman Marshall. In conclusion, well, we have a winner. So stay tuned for the Texas Whiskey Tournament Rye Division. And we'll see you next week on Stab the Dragon Productions. Out here.